It was supposed to be the best day in Esther's life. However, it turned into a nightmare and the girl went missing. Hi, I'm Esther and I'm 16. I was a shy and quiet girl from a simple family. I did well enough at school, listened to my parents, and was afraid of my own shadow. My neighbor, Julia, was my complete opposite. She had a terrible reputation. Julia was always getting into trouble and had a lot of problems with the law. Julia held a grudge against me ever since I saw her steal a bicycle from our neighbor and ratted on her. She went berserk and said I would regret it. To be honest, I was terrified of Julia, and I tried to stay out of her way. You can't hide from me forever, you chicken. I wished I was brave enough to kick that bully's butt. Then, the day I'd been waiting for finally came. I received an acceptance letter from a private school for rich kids. Studying there cost a fortune. Luckily, I was talented and I got in on scholarship. I was beyond happy. On my first day there, I put on my uniform and I went to class. I wasn't gonna let anyone ruin my mood that day. Not even Julia. I was hoping it would be the best day of my life, but everything very quickly went downhill. As soon as I walked into the classroom, everyone looked me up and down. The school's queens, Alice and Gwen, weren't impressed with what they saw. Esther is a scholarship student. Her family's poor as dirt. Does she think she's one of us just because we're wearing the same uniform? That sucked, but I bit my tongue. It wasn't all bad. A hot guy called Neil kept throwing glances at me. He was a local heartthrob. The new girl is cute. At recess, I was in for a surprise. He suddenly jumped out of my locker holding a bouquet of flowers. He made gaga eyes at me and he even asked me out. I turned red as a tomato, but I agreed. My haughty classmates were spitting mad. He's a rich heir and she's so plain. What does he see in her? I ignored their barbs, and I soon came to regret it. The bell rang and I was the first one to walk into the classroom. I slipped on something sticky and I fell on the floor. The worst thing was that my skirt flew up and everyone saw my underwear. They burst out laughing and I wanted to sink through the floor. I knew Gwen and Alice were the ones to blame. After all, they were laughing louder than anyone else. The principal came running at the noise, but he only shook his head in frustration and did nothing. And no wonder, the students in his school were so rich. He was scared of them. Crying my eyes out, I ran home and I locked myself in my room. I didn't want to go back to that awful school, and I was sick of being a weak wallflower. It always made me the butt of jokes. That's when I decided to run away from home and disappear. I sat down at my desk and I wrote a note. The next morning, a different, cool girl called Louise came to my school. She stared at her classmates and showed them my note. Hello, brats. I'm about to turn your lives into a living nightmare. Because of you, my sister Esther ran away from home and went missing. Whoever hurt her will pay for it. With those words, Louise sat down and put her feet on a desk. Everyone looked scared and didn't even dare look in her direction. My plan worked. I really did look like a different person, and you've probably already guessed I was Louise, right? Well then, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. In the meantime, I'll tell you what happened the night before. I had never been able to stand up for myself, so I decided to become my own fearless sister. After writing the note, I changed my look and threw the school uniform into the trash outside. Goodbye, shy Esther. From now on, I'll become Louise and get back at everyone for you. I begged my parents to tell my classmates I was missing if any of them asked. They agreed to play along as long as I didn't drop out of school. The next morning, I got into character and I went to school. The security guard didn't recognize me and didn't want to let me in. I had accidentally thrown away my pass with my uniform. Luckily, the principal was walking by and he asked us what the matter was. I had to tell him I was actually Esther, and I was trying to teach my insufferable classmates a lesson. I thought he would scold me and send me home. Imagine my surprise when he said he would help me. He was apparently fed up with those rich brats too. Okay, someone should put them in their place. Don't go too far though. I'll confirm you're Esther's sister. That's why everyone easily believed Louise was real. I wanted my classmates to feel on edge. But first, I had to find out who was responsible for that prank. I was pretty sure it was Alice and Gwen's doing, but I had no proof. Not yet. At lunch, Neil suddenly sat down next to me. He looked really stressed out and asked me if Esther had really run away from home. Her phone is turned off, and I'm worried. Butterflies fluttered in my stomach. It was so nice to see how much he cared. However, I had to act like Louise, so I didn't let it show. You're not the sharpest tool in the shed, are you? Of course, Esther's phone is off. She's missing. Neil frowned and left. Another classmate of mine called Kyle sat down next to me. I was new there, but I already knew that everyone avoided Kyle because they thought he was a weirdo. And, well, to be honest, he was a little bit strange. He wore a funny hat with rabbit ears. Wow, you're the first girl that didn't swoon when Neil talked to her. I lied and said he wasn't my type. We'll get along then. By the way, I'm sorry about your sister. I saw how upset she was after that prank. Do you want me to help you find out who spilled all that stuff on the floor? He proudly said that even though he had no friends, he knew about everything that happened in school. It really would have been stupid to refuse his help, so I agreed. Okay, welcome to the team. Awesome, we'll be like two detectives. We spent the whole day together. Kyle turned out to be a great guy and a good friend, even though he was a weirdo. After classes, I went home. To my surprise, Neil came over that evening. What was he doing there? I asked Dad to play along, hid behind the door, and I eavesdropped on their conversation. Is there any news about Esther? I tried to ask Louise how the search was going at school, but she didn't really answer. Louise? Come on, Dad, we talked about this. Oh, Louise, my second daughter. Why do you want to know? Are you Esther's boyfriend? Dad? Anyway, Esther hasn't been found yet. Neil sighed sadly and trudged home. I stared after him. It seemed he really did have a crush on Esther. On me, I mean. My heart fluttered. On my way to school the next morning, I saw Neil putting up missing posters of me. Oh, it was so cute, my stomach did cartwheels. But as soon as our eyes met, I got a grip on myself and got back into character. Do you really think this will help find my sister? At least I'm not sitting there and twiddling my thumbs like some people. I snorted and walked on, but really my heart did a little backflip. At school, I heard some rumors. My classmates were saying they had seen Esther stealing food from a supermarket. I guess she's a tramp now. Yeah, and she lives in a cardboard box. How dare they? I hadn't stolen anything. Unfortunately, I couldn't say it. All I could do was act like Louise to shut everyone up. Still, hearing such nasty rumors hurt, and tears stung my eyes. I hid in a closet so no one would be able to see Louise cry. But there was already someone there. It was Kyle. That weirdo liked eating his lunch alone there. Want to share a sandwich? Hey, are you okay? I started crying like a baby and I told him the truth about myself. So you're Esther? Yeah, I don't have a sister. I just wanted to teach them a lesson. Kyle promised to keep my secret and said he had overheard the girls' conversations and found out Alice and Gwen had been responsible for the prank after all. I knew it. Kyle smiled slyly and handed me a notebook. I came up with a detailed revenge plan. We'll teach those witches a lesson. Great! Justice would finally be done. And then I could come back to school as Esther. And Neil and I would finally become an item. Thank you, Kyle. You're such a good friend. I gave him a very friendly peck on the cheek and I hid the notebook. Later, the principal announced that our class was going on a field trip to a national park for the whole weekend. Kyle and I exchanged a sly glance because we had the same thought. This was a perfect opportunity to carry out our revenge plan. We boarded the bus, and my classmates started to gossip again. They said they had seen Esther smashing shop windows with some hooligans. I had had it with them! Esther would never have done something like that. I better not hear you badmouth her ever again. Everyone shrunk back from my glare and immediately fell silent. Good. Soon, we arrived at the park. Everyone left their clothes in their rooms and went exploring. Meanwhile, Kyle and I were getting ready. We wanted to climb up a tree and pour slop on Gwen and Alice. But as luck would have it, while I was looking for the perfect tree to hide on, I bumped into those bullies. The notebook fell out of my pocket. The girls picked it up and read my revenge plan. My heart sank. Louise, why were you trying to teach us a lesson? Don't act stupid. You messed with my sister because you got jealous. Esther would have forgiven you, but I'm not her. I won't let you get away with it. Gwen and Alice exchanged an anxious look and told me what had really happened. Sometimes we get a little carried away, but we didn't want to do that to your sister. It turned out they had been trying to prank Neil that day. They'd recently found out he'd been dating them both in secret. The girls flipped out when they found out that Heartbreaker was cheating on them with yet another girl. Esther fell into our trap completely by accident. We're really sorry. What? I couldn't believe it. Neil couldn't be such a bastard. I found him and I demanded an explanation. It's all true. I feel so ashamed that I cheated on Gwen and Alice. You might not want to believe me, but as soon as I saw Esther, I fell in love for the first time in my life. I really want to get your sister back. Neil didn't seem to be lying. Besides, he was clearly trying to find me, so I believed him. However, I didn't tell him I was Esther just yet. Instead, I found Kyle and told him it had all been a huge misunderstanding. There's no need for revenge anymore. Oh, well, okay. Now that that's over, I've wanted to say for a long time that I like you. Will you be my girlfriend? I apologized and said that I was in love with Neil, and I only wanted to be with him. Luckily, he didn't get mad, and he just asked if he could borrow my phone because his had died. After that, we joined the rest of our classmates. But before I could breathe a sigh of relief, things went downhill again. In the evening, it turned out that Alice, Gwen, and Neil had not returned to their rooms. I wanted to ask Kyle if he'd seen them, but he was also nowhere to be found. The principal and the local sheriff started interrogating me. The principal knew I'd wanted to get revenge on my classmates and decided I had probably done something to them. The sheriff then found my notebook with the revenge plan in the woods. All the evidence was pointing to me. Can you imagine?
If they don't come back tonight, you're in big trouble, Esther.
I had left my notebook with the girls after our talk, so I asked the sheriff where he'd found it, and then I ran there to look for them. All of a sudden, I heard shouts coming from an old hut in the forest. The door was propped up with a log. I kicked it away, and Neil and the girls ran out of the hut. Kyle wasn't with them. They said that they had all received messages from me asking them to come to the hut, but as soon as they got inside, someone had locked them in.
We couldn't call for help because there's no connection here.
I didn't text you, I swear. And then I remembered that Kyle had asked to borrow my phone. Had he really set me up? But why? And where was he? Then we heard a plaintive cry and ran towards the sound. Kyle's foot had gotten stuck under a rock, and he couldn't get it out. We helped him and then demanded an explanation.
Why'd you set up Louise? Huh, bro?
Wait, are you brothers?
Yeah. You made me do it.
Kyle snarled that he was tired of being in his brother's shadow and he hated Neil. He also held a grudge against the girls because they had turned him down.
You were the last straw for me, Esther. You chose Neil over me. I'd had it with all of you. If only I hadn't got stuck here.
After hearing all of that, everyone stared at me dumbfounded.
Why did he call you Esther? Come on, tell them the truth.
I guiltily explained that I didn't have a sister and I was pretending to be Louise because I was tired of being bullied. To my surprise, they didn't get mad at me. We had all done things we weren't proud of, so they forgave me.
Louise or Esther, I don't care. I like you anyway, Miss Riddle.
Kyle apologized too. It turned out he had no friends because this wasn't the first stunt he'd pulled. We made up and we came back to the hotel. After we explained everything to the principal, he cleared me of suspicion. There was no more need for lies or masks. So I said goodbye to Louise, bought a new uniform, and went back to school as myself. But that wasn't the end of my adventures. In the middle of the lesson, cops ran into the classroom and took me away to the station. What was it now? The cops accused me of trashing shopping malls and shoplifting.
We couldn't catch you for a long time until we found your school pass.
I was fuming. I hadn't done anything. Soon, the principal and my classmates arrived and confirmed I'd spent the entire weekend with them in a national park. I didn't have an alibi for the other days, though. I was close to having a full-blown mental breakdown. But then, another policeman let a girl into the station who looked exactly like me. Everyone was lost for words, me included. But then, I took a closer look at her and recognized Julia. It turned out that on the day I'd thrown away my uniform, she saw it, pulled it out of the trash, and transformed into me. Then she did all those things to set me up.
I told you I'd make you regret ratting me out.
But she'd miscalculated because the police had caught her red-handed when she was stealing clothes and arrested her. Now she'd be punished. The cops let me go. Phew, it was finally over. I realized justice isn't the same as revenge. Leave everything to karma, guys. The adventure helped me become stronger and find friends. No more masks. Well, I might dress up as Louise for Halloween or something. By the way, did you like the video and subscribe to the channel? Do it right now. Think about your karma.